A single dad arrives for a blind date in a snowy cabin, only to discover his companion is the sister of the CEO who once ruined his life. The storm traps them together. Ryan Hale drove up the winding mountain road with a mix of skepticism and hope, the kind of emotional blend he hadn't felt in years, not since before life forced him to grow up faster than he ever planned. The snow fell thick and heavy, flattening the world into quiet white sheets that swallowed the headlights of his old SUV. A blind date. He still couldn't believe he agreed to one, especially after a shift at the auto shop and picking up his 5-year-old daughter Molly from kindergarten. But his best friend wouldn't let it go, insisting that Ryan deserved a night to himself, a night where he wasn't fixing engines or scrubbing crayon drawings off the walls. So he promised Molly he'd bring her hot chocolate tomorrow, tucked her into bed, and drove toward the cabin the matchmaker agency had arranged. The place appeared at the end of a narrow path, its soft golden light glowing through frosted windows like an invitation out of a fairy tale. Smoke curled gently from the chimney. Ryan paused before stepping out, gripping the steering wheel as if steadying himself for a storm bigger than the one outside. When he finally forced himself to get out, the cold slapped him awake, snowflakes clinging to his jacket and hair. He reached the door, uncertain whether to knock or run back to the warmth of responsibility and routine. But before he could decide, the door opened, and Lena Ward appeared. She was nothing like the blind dates he had endured in the past. No forced confidence, no judgmental stare when he mentioned his daughter. Lena looked at him with gentle curiosity, like people fascinated her more than she wanted to admit. She wore a soft blue sweater, her long dark hair brushing her shoulders, her expression warm yet nervous. "You must be Ryan," she said, voice quiet but steady. He nodded, offering a smile that surprised him with how natural it felt. "And you must be my mystery companion." She laughed lightly, stepping aside to let him in. The cabin was exactly what a winter story wanted to be. A glowing fireplace crackling gently, candles flickering on a simple dinner table, wooden walls reflecting amber light. The warmth hit Ryan instantly, easing a tension he hadn't realized he'd carried for years. They sat near the fire, their chairs angled closer as if the room itself wanted them to feel comfortable together. For the first 30 minutes, they exchanged easy questions: favorite food, favorite childhood memory, worst job, until Lena asked about Molly. He expected the usual reaction, the polite shift, the subtle withdrawal, but Lena leaned in instead. "A single dad," she said softly. "That's brave. Hard, but brave." Most people treated him like damaged goods or a charity project. Lena treated him like a human being. He found himself telling her things he usually kept locked away, how lonely nights felt after Molly went to sleep, how financial stress gnawed at him, how trust had become a luxury he couldn't afford. And then she asked the question he'd been dreading. "Why did you leave your old job?" Ryan hesitated, fingers tracing the rim of his glass. "I didn't leave. I was pushed out." Lena's expression softened. "Can I ask why?" Ryan stared at the fire, letting the truth burn at the edges of memory. "I was accused of fraud. Someone forged approvals under my login. The CEO didn't give me a chance to explain." Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was heavy, real. For a moment he thought she might pity me, or worse, pull away. Instead, she reached across the table, her hand brushing his. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "That must have been unbearable." Her voice held no judgment, only understanding. Ryan felt something shift inside him, something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years: hope. But before the moment could settle, a harsh blast of headlights cut through the frost-coated windows. A car, climbing the path toward the cabin. Lena's face changed instantly, her warm expression tightening with anxiety. "She wasn't supposed to come," she muttered. Ryan frowned. "Who?" But before she could answer, the front door swung open with a gust of icy wind and snow, and standing there, framed by the storm like a cold omen, was Vivian Ward, the CEO who had fired him without hearing a single word of his defense. Her icy blue eyes locked on him with disbelief. "You!" she said. And Ryan's entire world tilted as he realized the truth. His blind date was the sister of the woman who had ruined his life.
Vivian Ward stepped into the cabin with the confidence of someone who had never lost an argument in her life, slamming the door shut behind her to block the howling wind, and for a moment the entire atmosphere changed from warm and intimate to sharp and electrified. The fire crackled in protest, as if it sensed the collision of past and present. Ryan Hale froze near the table, his heart punching against his ribs as memories he tried hard to bury came rushing back. Cold interrogation rooms, security escorting him out, coworkers whispering behind glass walls, and Vivian's expression, ice, absolute finality, no room for doubt or defense as she fired him for something he didn't do. Now she stood only a few feet away, her sleek blonde hair tied in a low bun, her perfectly pressed winter coat dusted with snow, and her blue eyes locked on him with a mix of disbelief and something sharper, something bordering on alarm. Lena rushed toward her sister with panic etched in her face. "Viv, what are you doing here? You weren't supposed to come." Vivian barely glanced at her, her attention fixed on Ryan like he was a problem she didn't know how to solve. "I came because the storm is getting worse," she said tightly, "and because I needed to make sure you were safe." Then her gaze snapped back to Ryan again, hard and assessing. "But I didn't expect this. Not him." The air felt heavy, thick with unspoken things. Ryan straightened his shoulders even though a part of him wanted to disappear. "I didn't know she was your sister," he said calmly, though his pulse was anything but calm. Lena turned to him with guilt in her eyes. "I was going to tell you. I just wanted you to get to know me before you heard my last name." Vivian stepped forward. "Lena, you matched with him? Out of everyone? This is the man who nearly cost my company millions." That familiar sting hit Ryan again, but he didn't let it show. "I didn't cost your company anything. Your employee framed me." Vivian's jaw tightened. "We had evidence." "Convenient evidence," he replied. "Too convenient." Lena stepped between them, her tone firm for the first time since she met him. "Viv, stop talking to him like he's some criminal. You don't even know the whole story." Vivian's eyes flashed with tension. "I know enough." But her voice wavered, barely noticeable, yet enough for Ryan to catch it. Something was wrong, something she wasn't saying. The storm outside slammed against the windows as if urging the truth forward. Ryan crossed his arms. "If you came all the way here in a blizzard, then say what you came to say." Vivian looked at him then, really looked, and something in her steel exterior cracked for just a second. She walked to the window, staring out into the swirling white. "An audit last month uncovered new information," she said quietly, as if the words were being forced out. "The employee who used your credentials, he confessed." Ryan felt the world tilt beneath him. Lena gasped. The fire popped loudly, like the cabin itself reacted to the revelation. "Confessed," Ryan said, voice low, controlled but shaking deep down. Vivian nodded once. "He admitted everything. He took money under your login, forged your approvals, and he targeted you because you were trustworthy." She swallowed, the first sign of guilt he had ever seen on her face. "I didn't know, not until the audit team came to me with the confession." Ryan felt anger coil tightly inside him, not loud, not explosive, but deep and heavy. "You knew a month ago, and you never reached out?" Vivian flinched. "I was going to." "But you didn't," Lena said sharply, stepping closer to Ryan as if protecting him from her own sister. "Viv, you should have told him immediately." Vivian's eyes flashed toward the snowstorm outside. "When I found out your blind date's name, I panicked," she said honestly. "I thought he matched with you because of revenge." Ryan almost laughed at the absurdity. "Revenge? I work 12-hour shifts to pay rent and raise my daughter. I don't have time for revenge." Vivian looked down, and the most surprising thing happened. Her voice softened. "I'm sorry." The words floated into the space like fragile things. Before anyone could react, the cabin lights flickered violently and then went completely dark. Lena jumped, gripping Ryan's arm. The wind roared, slamming something against the porch. Vivian looked toward the door, her eyes suddenly full of fear instead of authority. The sudden darkness made everything feel smaller, closer, more dangerous. "The generator might be freezing," Lena whispered. Ryan reached for the matches on the mantel. "Everyone stay together." A candle flickered to life, lighting their faces with warm, trembling light. Vivian's expression had changed completely, no longer a CEO facing an employee she once condemned, but a woman stuck in a storm with people she wasn't sure she could fully trust. And Ryan realized something as he lit a second candle. This night wasn't just about a blind date or an apology. It was about something bigger, something the darkness outside seemed to be waiting for.
The moment the lights died, the cabin felt like it had been swallowed whole by the storm, every corner sinking into a deep hush that made Lena grab Ryan's arm without thinking, her breath tight and fast as the candles flickered in fragile circles of yellow. The wind outside shrieked like something alive, rattling the windows hard enough to make the glass hum. Vivian stood stiffly near the door, her silhouette sharp in the dim light, all her polished CEO confidence slipping away as reality settled around them. They were snowed in, with a storm that wasn't slowing down, in a cabin that suddenly felt too quiet and too vulnerable. Ryan moved through the room with calm, steady steps, the kind of movement that came naturally to a man who had learned long ago that panicking never helped anyone, especially not a child waiting for him at home. He lifted a candle, scanning the narrow wooden beams above them. "The generator must have frozen," he said, keeping his voice even, steadying the air for Lena's sake. "Storm this strong can knock anything out." Lena exhaled shakily and wrapped a blanket tighter around her shoulders. "We should check it," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. "Not right now," Ryan replied gently. "We're not opening doors in this." Vivian turned from the window, her face glowing faintly in the candlelight, her blue eyes reflecting something Ryan had never seen in her before: uncertainty. "We need to make a plan," she said, but the firmness she tried to put in her voice wavered. "The storm will last hours, maybe longer." Ryan gave her a look, not sharp, but undeniably honest. "Then we ride it out." Vivian didn't argue, which alone told him how shaken she was. They settled near the fireplace, the three of them sitting in a triangular formation around the fading glow of the flames. The heat felt thinner now, the darkness pressing against them from every direction, as if the cabin's wooden walls were shrinking. Lena's fingers trembled slightly as she tucked her hair behind her ear. "Viv," she said quietly, "you didn't come all the way here just to apologize. Something else brought you here." Vivian's expression flickered: fear, guilt, and something that looked like hesitation. She stared at the fire as if searching inside it for answers. "After the confession, I started looking deeper into everything that happened during that time. The forged approvals, the accounts, the timing." Ryan felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. "And?" Vivian looked at him, and for the first time she spoke without the armor of authority. "The employee who framed you. He didn't act alone." Lena gasped. Ryan's jaw tightened. Vivian continued. "There were others involved. Investors, people with influence, people who didn't want a trail leading back to them. He confessed, but he didn't name names. Instead, he escaped before they could get more out of him." Ryan stared at her through the candlelight, anger and disbelief struggling inside him. "You're saying the people who destroyed my life might be out there, watching, waiting?" Vivian nodded weakly. "And they might think you know more than you do." The cabin seemed to exhale a cold breath at her words. Lena moved closer to Ryan instinctively, her body leaning toward him in silent trust. Ryan rested a hand lightly on her knee, not thinking, just grounding her the way he wished someone had grounded him the day his world collapsed. Before anyone could respond, a sharp, heavy thud struck the outside wall of the cabin. The three of them froze. Another thud, this time on the far side, rattling the old wooden beams. Lena's eyes widened. What was that? Ryan was already standing, reaching for the metal wrench he'd spotted earlier. He grabbed it with a practiced grip, his instincts snapping to attention. "Stay behind me," he said quietly, firmly. Vivian moved to Lena's side, her expression drawn tight as the sounds continued, slow, deliberate thuds sliding from one wall to another, like someone or something circling the cabin. Ryan stepped toward the window and wiped away the fog with the back of his hand, his breath catching as he peered into the swirling snow. Nothing, only white chaos. But he knew what he heard. He stepped back. "Someone's out there." Lena covered her mouth. Vivian whispered, "You think it's him? The one who ran?" Ryan didn't answer because he didn't know, and the not knowing was worse than the truth. The fire snapped loudly, sending sparks upward. The storm outside roared. And inside the cabin, three people who barely trusted each other found themselves bound not by choice, but by danger closing in from the snow-soaked darkness. The night had turned from apology to survival, and Ryan felt it deep in his bones. Whatever was waiting out there wasn't done with them yet. The cabin walls groaned under the force of the storm as Ryan stepped away from the window, the wrench heavy in his hand and his senses sharpened by the kind of tension that made every heartbeat feel like an alarm. Lena clung to the edge of the table, her wide eyes bouncing nervously between the dark windows and the flickering flames, while Vivian, so often the unshakable one, stood rigid with her arms wrapped tightly around herself as if trying to anchor her body to something solid in a world suddenly shifting under her feet. The thuds outside had stopped, but the silence they left behind felt heavier than the sounds themselves, and the way the wind screamed across the cabin's corners made it impossible to tell where the danger was coming from. Ryan moved toward the front door with slow, deliberate steps, motioning quietly for the sisters to stay back as he checked the deadbolt again, even though he knew he'd locked it minutes earlier. The air around the entryway was icy, seeping through the wood in thin, invisible threads, and when he pressed his palm against the door, he could feel the faint trembling of something. Wind, maybe, or something brushing against the exterior. He reached for the peephole, bracing himself, and lifted the tiny cover. For a second, all he saw was the swirling blizzard. Then something shifted. A shadow moved in the whiteout, vague but tall, standing just beyond the porch where the weak porch light flickered helplessly. Ryan blinked once, hard, but the figure didn't disappear. It stood unnervingly still, as if watching, waiting for him to notice. His stomach pulled tight. He closed the peephole instantly. "There's someone out there," he said, voice low but steady. Lena gasped softly and covered her mouth. Vivian stepped forward, despite the tremor in her hands. "Are you sure? The storm plays tricks." "I know what I saw," Ryan cut in gently but firmly. "Tall, standing still, too still." Vivian swallowed hard, her posture tightening, her eyes flicking toward the back hallway as if calculating possible entry points. Lena moved closer to Ryan, her voice barely a whisper. "What do they want?" Ryan didn't answer because he didn't know, not truly, and the possibilities churned through his mind with unsettling speed. The man who framed him? Someone working with him? Or a stranger caught in the storm? But strangers didn't stand motionless in the snow. Strangers didn't circle cabins without calling out. Strangers didn't knock once and then vanish. Before anyone could speak again, a loud bang smashed against the back wall of the cabin, easily distinguishable from the storm this time. Lena screamed, jumping into Ryan's side, and Vivian darted toward them, her hand gripping Lena's arm tightly. The sound came again, another deliberate hit, like someone testing the structure, looking for weak spots. Ryan moved down the hallway fast, the wrench raised, every muscle in his shoulders coiled with readiness. The generator door was closed when Lena last checked, but now as he approached, he saw that it hung slightly ajar, snow blowing in through the crack. His pulse hammered. Someone had opened it. He nudged the door fully open with a wrench. The cold slapped him instantly, the snow swirling in with frantic intensity, coating the hallway floor. Fresh footprints dotted the snow right inside the entryway, leading into the cabin. Lena and Vivian froze at the sight, their expression shifting from fear to something deeper. Realization. They weren't alone. Not anymore. Ryan's voice came out low, steady, protective. "Back to the living room. Stay behind me." They moved quickly, huddled together, breaths sharp and uneven. When they returned to the main room, the fire crackled with an eerie hiss, the flames casting long, twisting shadows across the floor. Ryan's eye scanned every corner, every piece of furniture. "He's inside," he said. The words hung in the room like a sentence. Suddenly, a sharp crash echoed from the living room window, something metallic hitting the glass from outside. They all spun toward it, hearts racing. Ryan approached slowly, trying to see through the frost, but before he reached it, the shadow outside vanished again, swallowed by the storm. Vivian whispered, "He's moving around us, watching us." Lena trembled violently. "Why? What does he want?" Ryan exhaled, the wrench still in his white-knuckled grip. "Maybe he wants to scare us. Maybe he wants us distracted.
Maybe he's waiting for the storm to get worse. The room tightened around them. The fire's warmth suddenly felt distant. The storm outside wailed like a warning cry, and Ryan realized with unsettling clarity that they were caught in a trap with someone who knew how to use fear as a weapon, someone who had the patience to stalk rather than strike, someone who wouldn't leave until he got what he came for.
The storm raged like a living beast against the cabin walls as Ryan guided Leanna and Vivienne back toward the fireplace, every muscle in his body tense with the instinct to protect. The wind screamed through the cracks of the wooden structure, and the shadows cast by the flames stretched long and distorted, making the room feel both too large and too small at the same time. Leanna clutched his sleeve, her fingers cold and trembling, while Vivienne stayed close behind her, her posture rigid, but her eyes betraying fear that even her CEO armor couldn't hide. The footprints by the generator door, the shadow outside the windows, the heavy knocks on the walls, it all formed a tight circle around them, closing in with suffocating precision. They weren't dealing with someone random. Someone was hunting them. Ryan's breath frosted in the cold air as he knelt by the fire and tossed in more wood, watching the flames rise, their heat feeling oddly thin against the creeping dread. "He's playing with us," Ryan said quietly. Leanna hugged her arms to her chest. "Why? What does he want?" Ryan didn't answer, because the truth he didn't want to admit was the one Vivienne slowly brought into the open. "Because of me," she whispered. Her voice cracked, soft and unfamiliar for a woman who built an empire on never cracking. She stepped closer to the fire, her shadow flickering with the flames. Because of everything that happened, the man who framed Ryan, he wasn't working alone. Ryan turned toward her slowly, his jaw tight as the weight of old wounds collided with the immediate danger around them. "You said he confessed." "He did," Vivienne said, swallowing hard. "But that was only part of it. After the confession, he was supposed to name the partners who helped him. Someone on the inside, someone with influence. But before he could say a word..." Her voice trailed off. The fire popped sharply, filling the silence. Leanna leaned in. "Viv, finish it." Vivienne looked at them with guilt in her eyes. "He escaped during transport. Or so they said." Ryan narrowed his eyes. "What do you mean, so they said?" Vivienne exhaled shakily, her shoulders lowering as if they carried far more weight than Ryan ever realized. "I think he was helped out. The people he worked with didn't want him talking. And if he thinks I'm about to expose them, or that Ryan knows something..." Ryan felt the truth settle coldly in his chest. "You think he came here?" Vivienne nodded once. "He knew I'd be checking on Leanna tonight, and he knew you were matched with her. He probably saw your name on the report." Leanna paled, stepping closer to Ryan as if his presence could shield her from the truth. "So he followed you? Through a storm?" Vivienne's voice shook. "If he thinks he's in danger, he'll do anything, and he'll hurt anyone he believes is connected to the truth." The storm outside punctuated her words with a roar, and suddenly a thud hit the window again, harder this time, making Leanna flinch and grab Ryan's arm with both hands. Ryan moved forward instantly, positioning himself between the sisters and the window. He stared into the frosted glass, but all he saw was swirling white. Still, the sense of being watched was sharp enough to raise the hairs on his arms. "He's circling again," Ryan murmured. The cabin creaked, settling under the weight of snow. Vivienne wrapped her arms around herself. "We need to call for help. No signal out here, and the landline is dead." Leanna's breath shook. "So what do we do?" Ryan turned toward them, steady and controlled despite the adrenaline pumping in his veins. "We stay together. We don't give him an opening. He wants fear. He's not getting it." Leanna stepped closer, her voice cracking. "Ryan, what if he tries to break in?" Ryan held his gaze with quiet certainty. "Then he meets me first." Vivienne looked at him with something like respect softening her expression. "You didn't deserve any of this. Not then, not now." Ryan didn't answer. He couldn't, not with danger pressing in from every side. The fire crackled louder as if trying to warn them, the storm's roar blending with a sudden crunch of snow outside. Someone moving, slowly, deliberately, right past the front door. Leanna's breath hitched. Vivienne stiffened. Ryan raised the wrench higher, stepping forward with a controlled calm that masked the storm inside his chest.
The shadows trembled on the walls, the cabin groaned under the wind, and the night closed in tighter around them. Whatever was coming, it wasn't over, not even close, and Ryan knew with bone-deep certainty that the storm outside was nothing compared to the one about to break inside the cabin.
The next thud against the cabin door was sharper, heavier, and final, the kind of impact that made Ryan's instincts roar to life as he stepped forward, wrenched grip tight, his body positioned between danger and the two women behind him, while the storm hurled itself against the wooden walls as if nature itself was trying to warn them of what was coming. The candles flickered violently, throwing frantic shadows across the room as another hit struck the door, and this time the wood splintered, a crack spreading like a jagged scar straight through the frame. Lena choked on a gasp, and Vivian pulled her close, both of them crouching as the door shook under the force of a third blow. Ryan raised the wrench higher, breath steady despite the pounding of his heart, and stepped forward just as the next strike hit with such force that the cabin finally gave way, bursting open in a violent spray of snow and shards of wood. The storm blasted in, wind howling like a wounded animal, and standing in the doorway, framed by chaos in snowlight, was the intruder. Tall, built for violence, dressed in black winter gear with goggles hiding his eyes and a crowbar gripped tightly in one gloved hand. He moved with purpose, not hesitation, not fear. Purpose. Lena screamed. Vivian lunged to shield her, dragging her behind the fallen dresser Ryan had pushed up earlier as a barrier, while Ryan surged forward, meeting the intruder head-on before the man could fully step inside. The crowbar swung with deadly weight, slicing through the cold air, but Ryan blocked it with the wrench, the metal-on-metal clash exploding through the cabin with a ringing, sickening pitch. The vibration traveled up his arm, but he held firm, pushing back hard enough to shove the intruder off balance. Snow swirled across the wooden floor as they grappled, slipping, colliding, the storm pouring through the doorway like an accomplice. The intruder swung again, wild and fast, but Ryan lowered his shoulder and rammed him into the wall, the impact knocking loose a cascade of snow from the roof and forcing the crowbar free from his grip. It clattered across the floor, sliding toward the fireplace. The man lunged after it, but Ryan grabbed the back of his coat, yanked him backward, and slammed him down hard, the floorboards shuddering. For a moment, Ryan thought he had him pinned, until he felt the intruder's boot slam into his ribs, knocking the breath from his lungs as he stumbled back. Lena cried out his name, her voice cracking with terror, but Ryan forced himself upright just as the intruder charged again. The man hit him with the force of someone fighting for more than escape, someone fighting for silence, for secrets, for control. And Ryan realized with chilling clarity that this wasn't just the man who framed him. This was someone higher, someone with more to lose, someone desperate enough to kill. The intruder swung a punch, but Ryan dodged, grabbed the fallen crowbar, and used the momentum to sweep the man's legs out from under him. The intruder hit the ground with a thud, and Ryan didn't give him a chance to recover. He swung the crowbar downward, stopping the arc at the last possible second before impact, opting instead to slam it into the floor next to the man's head. The message was clear. The fight was over. Chest heaving, snow melting down his face, Ryan pinned the intruder by the collar just as Vivian rushed over, her face pale but fierce, and with trembling hands she ripped off the man's goggles, revealing the truth beneath. A face twisted in rage and fear, the same man who orchestrated the scheme that cost Ryan everything. Thomas Hale wasn't the puppet. He was the puppet master. Lena collapsed into tears as she realized who he was. Vivian stared in horror, recognition dawning like a cruel sunrise. You were supposed to be under investigation. Thomas sneered, breath fogging the air. I had help. The same people who wanted him gone. He flicked his eyes at Ryan with venom. You should have stayed ruined. Ryan tightened his grip. Not tonight. They tied him with extension cords from the storage room, securing him against a support beam just as the storm finally began to break, the wind softening from a scream to a shudder. Dawn crept slowly across the horizon, pale pink light filtering through the broken doorway. Bathing the cabin in a fragile calm, Lena rushed to Ryan, throwing her arms around him in a shaking hug, while Vivian stepped forward, voice cracking, as she said, Ryan, I swear to you, everything will be corrected, publicly, legally, fully. Ryan nodded, exhausted but standing tall, feeling the weight of survival settling into something else, something warmer. Lena wiped her tears, offering a small, hopeful smile. When all this is over, can we try that date again? Ryan breathed out a laugh, soft and real. Yeah, I'd like that. The storm had come to break them. Instead, it revealed every truth they needed to survive.
If you want more twisted romance, danger, and single dad stories, hit follow and turn on notifications for Drew Daily Stories. New dramatic episodes drop every day.